welcome to season 1's wrap episode of Just and Joyful. It's happening. Angelina, we did it.
We did it. A whole season.
A whole season. Oh my gosh. And what a juicy season it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it feels pretty wild to sit here 6 months later after all of that planning, all of the research, and we have it. We did it. The conversations are out there.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. Yeah. And I think back to how many conversations you and I had about doing this podcast and all the iterations that it, was sort of undergoing along the way. And then to be able to arrive at this version of it. And I think I'm so excited when we look, just like spoiler alert, season 2 is coming. There will be a season 2 of Just and Joyful. And we have so many plans for it. Angelina and I were just together earlier this week for an incredible retreat. And the entire focus of that retreat was Just and Joyful. And I'm purposely saying Just and Joyful because we have lots of plans for Just and Joyful as a whole, right?
Yes.
And, it's just, again, so excited about that. And the journey, even to get to just season 1, I feel like being together this week, we sort of realized like there's always like just our podcast is very much like the humans that we are and that we have on the show, which is that we always evolve and we always shift and we always grow and we always expand. And so I'm so excited for us that season 2 is really, it's going to be an expansion of what season 1 is. And I feel like, again, we've had such beautiful conversations about what this podcast could be, about what this place, what this platform could look like. And, I certainly didn't anticipate that it would launch by me sharing, I had a mental health crisis and that would kind of be like the origin point for this. And it also feels like it makes a lot of sense now. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And it also, it gives me so much comfort when I think back, years ago when you first had this idea and we were kind of toying around with, what would the shape of the conversations look like? What is the kind of through line in the conversations? And it shifted a lot in those early years when we were just ideating. And to me, it's such a great illustration of wait until the time is right. This podcast got to launch in such a powerful, beautiful way. And that would not have been possible if you and or us had forced something earlier, just in order to have the idea come to life or for the idea to be public. So it's just also for me, I've just been reflecting a lot on the responsibility of waiting and that there's like so much wisdom in waiting until it's, you know what I'm saying?
I know. And that was such a powerful statement. Joshua, you got to clip this up. And just for y'all that don't know, Joshua is our incredible audio engineer. And I'm like, yes, there is wisdom in the waiting. I love that, Angelina. I love that. And you're right. Like that also just like feels like the theme of this season is there was a lot of wisdom in the waiting. And I feel like everybody that we had on this season knows what it's like to go through that waiting period and to like, we know what it looks like to try to push through something and like try to force something that isn't yet ready. And we like, again, our guts tell us, right? Of like, girl, it's not, what are you doing? You're taking the cake out of the oven too soon.
Yep.
Let it be. I know you're hungry. I know you got a sweet tooth right now, but just like, let it marinate.
Yes.
I just love thank you for saying that. And that just feels like such a, again, it feels like the theme of season 1 is there's
Mm-hmm.
wisdom in the waiting.
Yeah.
A treat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there were, even thinking about all of our guests from season 1, they're people that we've known for a long time. And, their stories have changed and evolved and expanded. And to get to greet each other in this iteration is also pretty incredible. So it just feels like it was so lovely to take some time earlier this week, like Kristin said, to just sit together and celebrate what this season
Mm,
created and what we were able to capture.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you and I talked a little bit about this when we were together, but like you and I are we're story people.
Hmm.
We're story people, and we're always like we're so curious, and we want to understand, like we want to look into the minds of the people who are doing the thing and doing it differently and trying to create a more just and joyful world in the
Yeah.
process. And we're, I think of all of these individuals that we've had on this season, and I even think of my own story, and I think of yours, right?
Mhm.
Of just, you know, this podcast was, we were hoping to have really nuanced and story
Mhm.
filled conversations around mental health. And,
Yeah.
one, I'm like, yeah, we did that. We are doing that. And we're looking forward to continuing to do that. And I think that as the season progressed and as we've continued to evolve, I'm excited for us to explore that in an even bigger way in season 2,
Mhm.
and to, like, it's not, this won't, quote unquote, just be a mental health
Mhm.
podcast, right? It's like we're, y'all, as Angelina and I are having all these conversations, we're like, this thing touches this and this thing touches this. And I think
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the what we were trying to somewhat accomplish, if you will. I'll use that word here, but it's like with season 1 is that in the process of me um breaking down and breaking through and building back and reemerging, I feel like I am like living proof of how many different things impact our
Mhm.
well-being, and in
Mhm.
all of these, like, and you wouldn't necessarily put it in the quote unquote mental health box, right?
Mhm.
Like, we don't always say style is mental health. We don't always talk about like
Yeah.
public speaking being mental health. We don't always talk about ambition being mental health, right? But it's like
Mhm.
that is what is happening. And
Mhm.
so I feel like we got to do that in some ways in a very, like, we were intentional about it, but it has really, it's very much like revealed itself for, oh, like we're about to go even bigger in season 2
Mhm.
and exploring some of these things. And really, we've heard from, so many of you in private messages and DMs, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. But how, you know, oh my gosh, when so and so was sharing about their story and they said this specific thing, I've never thought of it that way. Like,
Mhm.
I needed this, or thank you so much for sharing your story. And we just keep hearing like story, 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 story.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for us to really like double down on that, because you and I love the story piece. We've always
Mhm.
loved that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it reminds me of something that you said when we were sitting together at the beach. Um, you said something about, let me think of how you phrased it. You phrased it so beautifully. I'm going to paraphrase, but essentially, you can't argue with someone's story.
Mm,
And in a time when we're all listening for, everything is so charged
it's
in
so true.
every facet
Yeah, yeah,
of connection. And story is like the one thing where it's like if we can retain our humanity and hear each other's stories, that's a way in.
yeah.
That's
Yep.
a way towards connection. And so I that gives me hope even in this moment in a broader context of just story remains. And um bringing your story to the table is still a way in to connection with people that where connection might otherwise not feel doable or possible or too fraught.
Yeah, or even fake, quite
Yes.
frankly, right? Like
Mhm.
manufactured. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think you know, I'm really really conscious of that even you know, throughout my day and my own life too of you know, and I think even more than story, it's like just it's really hard to argue with someone's experience, right?
Yes.
And so it's
Mhm.
like, you know, I'm finding myself and constantly challenging myself and you know, I had an opportunity when I was sitting in partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient to like practice this skill on a whole
Mhm.
other level because, you know, I have heard from some of you that you do actually know what partial hospitalization is. You do know what intensive outpatient is because you've been there.
Mhm.
And then I've heard from some of you you don't know what that's like. And for those of you who do, you're probably familiar with this piece. And for those of you who don't, when we sit in those types of rooms or group therapeutic rooms, we don't say things like, "Well, you should." We respond with "I"
Mm.
statements. And so there was this opportunity for me when I was sitting inside those rooms to again like practice this of like practice hearing people's experiences, hearing people's
Yeah.
stories, like holding space for their feelings and their emotions and not saying you should do this with that. Like you
Yeah.
need to blah blah blah, you blah blah blah, right? That's not actually helpful.
Mhm.
Eh, We would open up the floor and go, I can only speak to my experience. I have done blah, blah, blah. I have seen this.
Mhm.
This has been helpful for me. And I think my hope too with Justin Joyful was and is to like take that practice and bring that into this environment too, where we sit in front of people and we hear their stories and their experiences and, you know, and go like, wow, that's like it gets to be like building blocks, right? We get to listen to
Mhm.
someone else's experience and go like, wonder if I might try that on in my own life and see if that works for me. Is that, you know, is that helpful for me? Does that get me closer to this life that I want to live, to the just and joyful world that I want to create? And so I think that's the part that I'm like, I'm so that gives me a lot of hope for humanity
Mm.
and us having helpful, you know, and productive conversations too, right? Where it's like, you know, if we were to actually practice that, what type of world would that create?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Certainly a surge of compassion,
Yes.
which we are in short supply of.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for what's to come. But
Yeah.
before we get
Shall we not give it all away now? Y'all are gonna
um
be you're in for such a ride. And I will say too, before we delve into kind of like looking back at some of the
mhm.
moments that I mean, y'all, Angelina and I talk offline about some of the conversations that we've had, and we're like, oh gosh, like I feel like, you know, when so and so said this thing right now, like I'm trying so hard to practice this in my life. Like we
Mhm.
still like there are things that people have said and shared, you know, this season that have stuck with us in really deep, profound ways. So before we look back at all the juicy moments from the season and all the ones that have stuck with us, I do want you all to know that like we're saying we're super excited about season 2 and all of these plans. We always want to hear from you. We always want you to,
Mhm.
you know, be in our DMs, email us, right? Reach out to us and
Mhm.
let us know like the things that are the people that you'd like to see on the show, the
Mhm.
conversations, like the topics you want to the questions you have too, because this, if if it's not helping you, right? If it's not
Yeah.
helping us, it just feels like more noise, and it's
Mhm.
like we have plenty of that. And so I want you all to know, as our incredible listeners and viewers, that you have such a say in this show too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's meant for, for your benefit as much as it is, right, for us
Yes.
too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And there's lots of ways to do that. If you follow Kristin on socials, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, you can shoot a message there. We also have a form on our website, justinjoyful.com.
Mm-hmm.
So you can also shoot us a message there. Whatever you prefer. We'd love to hear from you.
Shall we look back?
I would love to look back, because the other thing I want to say is what I love about these conversations is that they're, what we're doing here, we're not responding to news of the day, or they're not super tied to current trends of the moment where the conversation was recorded. So these are conversations that we hope that you will return to over and over, whenever the time is right for you to visit these topics and explore the conversations. Then, if you missed it when it came out, that doesn't mean that you missed the boat entirely. You can go back and listen. And
Mm-hmm.
I go back and sometimes just hit play on a random episode on YouTube, because I'm just like, I need a little something today.
Yeah. A
And it
little
just,
inspo.
yeah. So I hope, even as we're, moving forward towards season 2, that that you'll continue to go back and get some of the gems, because there were a lot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, okay, let's start with some of those gems.
Yes.
Okay. We, kicked off the season with Sarah Stanisai. And I mean, Sarah had, like, you and I are both obsessed with Sarah, right? So it's like, we
Hold
just
on, hold
knew.
on. Can you go back and read, because your video froze?
Yep,
Say,
of course it did. Hey, just FYI, we just came back from a cut. I just laughed for 5 minutes straight. I promise I didn't cry my eyes out. Oh, okay. So we started the season off with Sarah Stanisai. And Angelina, I know you and I are both so obsessed with Sarah. We've been obsessed with Sarah from day one.
Yeah.
Tell me about, like, one of the moments that really stuck out to you from that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many, and I feel like her energy, I hope that if you listen to the episode, you get a feel for her energy. She's just one of those people that, no matter how I was feeling, when we were working with her, like, I just felt so much joy,
Yes.
and like a
Yes.
little bit of levity, even when we're talking about hard things.
Mm.
But the one thing that just plays, kind of loops in my brain, was a part of the conversation where she was kind of addressing some of the stuff that was happening in our political and social climate right now. And she was also, giving advice on, like, how do we take care of ourselves through this moment? And then she said the phrase, "You can't deep breathe your way out of oppression."
Whew.
And that really hit me, because I think it is so profound on multiple levels of, yes, on just the face of it, we cannot, the inequity that we're seeing, and the very real harm and danger and lack of safety that so many people are living in right now, you can't sit down and just deep breathe out of that. And also,
box breathing is nothing for that, right?
No. It might equip you to center your mind enough to go and continue the work, but it will not fix the issue that's perpetuating this harm, that's causing us to have
cause. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it spoke to me on that level. It also spoke to me as a white person. I could potentially deep breathe my way out of oppression, because I'm not being oppressed in the way that so many other identities are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, even though she didn't take it in this way, it also convicted me a little bit of, am I sometimes looking at what's happening and how I take care of myself? Like, is there any almost subconscious or unconscious bias lying around there, where I'm like,
Yeah,
the way I see the world, it's like, yeah, I can deep breathe and be okay for a day. but there are a lot of people who can't, who like, and it just,
Yeah. Yep.
it just, that really stuck with me. And I'd keep just looping that.
So good. Yeah, she also, I remember too, you talk about that, like that kind of moment of conviction as you're listening. I remember her talking about like, I think I had asked her a question about like what were some of like the warning signs, what were some of the yellow flags that
Mm,
she had seen around like what she knew she wasn't okay. Like we
yeah.
have tells, right? And she was
Mm-hmm.
she was, sharing more about that on the episode. And if you're curious about that, obviously go listen to the episode in
Mm-hmm.
full because Sarah gives some really, really great ones there. But she had specifically mentioned like this moment where she pulled out an old laptop and she saw how many unfinished projects, and she was like, "Oh, I just like, oh, I feel like I
Yeah.
felt really sorry for her, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
she's saying that to herself and about herself. And I remember those moments for myself too, where it was like, again, I'm trying, like, I'll just like hustle my way out of this, right? Like I'll just push through, and to just hear someone else. I know that is not that that's not the only, that experience is not
Mm-hmm.
unique to me.
Yeah.
But I actually needed to hear that. And so I really, really
Mm,
loved that she talked about that. And I think, again, sometimes we have this like perception, and we get into this with Allie's episode too,
yeah.
right? That we have this perception that therapists don't need therapy or that they don't need help, right? And that they don't experience burnout and they have all the
Mm-hmm.
tools in the toolbox to help themselves. And it's like there's still, they navigate so many of the same things that we do, right? So
Yeah.
I feel like we can put them up on pedestals. And um yeah, I really loved that about Sarah's episode and Allie's too.
Yeah. Allie's episode, I loved that she shared so many just practical ways that she takes care of herself every day. And I
Mm-hmm,
love, and
mm-hmm.
you clocked this too when she said it, when she talked about her movement snacks.
Oh, I was done for when she said
Yeah.
that.
I was like, because it's just, I put so much pressure on myself, especially around movement, that it's got to be like
Mm,
at least 30 minutes. And and when the way she framed it
yeah, yeah,
was just really like very freeing of just like, it doesn't have to be this huge thing.
yeah. It
It can
felt
be like,
very like, I'm like, oh, like just and joyful movement, right? Like it's like that to me, like talking
mm-hmm.
about the movement snack part of it is what felt like, oh, this is like one of the embodiment. Like if we were to like point to like what's just and joyful, it's like, oh,
Yes.
that. Sarah was incredible. Allie was phenomenal. We have this conversation with Cece, and
Mm-hmm.
whoo, like, I mean, y'all, we've been so blessed to have some really incredible conversations with Cece over the years. And I feel like we've wanted to hit
Mm-hmm.
record or like found ourselves like writing down so many
Yeah.
things, that she's said. And to be able to like, now we have it
Uh,
captured, and I look forward to having her on again in the future. But I think you and I were both like fell out of our chairs when she started talking about how she'll never frustrate Grace like that again.
mm-hmm.
What a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, I just had never even thought of it that way. The way, she framed her work, and that Grace provided for her through all that. But
Mm-hmm.
but rather than, I think there was such wisdom in her looking back on that and being and saying that of, I had provision, and I was cared for, but I'm never going to frustrate it again like that.
It was so good. And I think, I remember her also talking about that kind of in the context of like, she understood that she had an assignment for a season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for
Mm-hmm.
so many of our listeners, it can be that we like, we don't always have that, or struggle sometimes with the discernment of like, do I do this thing indefinitely? Is it for but a time? And I think CC also just like gave us tons of permission to like hold the boundary too of like when we know and when our gut is telling us that we're supposed to do this thing for, you know, again, but a season. Cece is just like, she's such a, I hear her voice on repeat, even as I think, you know, about some of the assignments that I've had. Right.
Yeah.
So, that was so, so beautiful. And I loved seeing her model that for our listeners and viewers.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many other, there's so many other parts of that conversation that I would love to clip here so that if you haven't listened to it and you're listening to this, you can hear it. But you just got to go listen to the whole conversation. Cause like you said, everything that she shares, like in the context of what she shares, it's made even so much more powerful.
Such a good, and that one's just like, it's like, I think especially, you know, for those of us who are doing a lot of advocacy or cause-based work, that one is just like, you just got to return to it over and over and over again. Like I remember when that episode came out, and I've also listened to it several times since, and it's like, it's meant something different to me based on wherever I was that day. And I think all of our conversations will find you in those places too. But wow, what a juicy one. And then we had the incredible privilege. We jumped from talking about, you know, well-being in the midst of, you know, advocacy and life-saving work to talking about style and mental health and well-being with Brandeis Johnson. And I don't think people saw us like going, you know, quote unquote, swerving into that lane.
Yeah, and even on the face of it, you could say you go from such an intense topic to something that feels like, she said, we have this misconception that style and fashion is frivolous, and she did such a good job of framing it in a way that eliminates some of that guilt, that it isn't frivolous. It actually is like a responsibility to ourselves to take care of ourselves well. And style can actually does not only have the potential to be a positive component of that, but it actually can be a good tool to work, like to in your well-being toolkit, if you will. And I think something that really helped me enter that conversation was her talking about the difference between style and fashion. Because I'm not, you know, fashion has never felt accessible to me specifically, like for me personally. You know, I don't have loads of money to spend on really expensive clothes. Some of the looks that I see, you know, when you look at high fashion or runways, I find it, I like looking at it because it's fun, but I'm like, that's not, that doesn't translate to me. And then I'm hearing The Devil Wears Prada in the back of my mind as I'm saying that.
We know.
Yeah, but her definition of, you know, that style is this personal tool and fashion, and like we need to disentangle it from fashion even. I was like, oh, okay. Because I do really care about my personal style. It's a way that I tell the world who I am, a little bit about who I am. It's a way that I show how I'm feeling. And so that was really empowering for me, specifically, like just in a personal sense of feeling like I had a way in to that.
Yeah. And, you know, honestly, what's coming to mind too, I think about how, because, you know, for me, so much of that conversation centered around body and my relationship to my body. And, you know, and I think that's the other piece here too, right? Is like Brandeis was really like illuminating how do you dress the, you know, how do you dress and love and there's like acceptance, right, for the body that you have. And she talks about her own journey with that too. And that was so like, I so appreciated her sharing that, because I think, again, there's so many folks, And if you haven't listened to the full episode, you've got to go listen to it because I think it's just incredibly, this episode is going to drop in the summertime. And I think often sometimes like summertime for women, we can have all sorts of things that come up in terms of bodies. And there's this like pressure to show more of ourselves. And also quite literally, it can get warm and the skin needs to breathe and all the things. And we can feel a type of way about that. And so, she said this, she talked about how as our bodies change, we can often be like, well, I'm a different size now, so I need to throw everything out. Right. And, to me, it felt like whenever she said that, I was like, that's so representative of this just kind of larger sort of polarizing mindset that we can take into everything. Right. It's either this or that. Right. It's like, it's all or nothing. And I love that, like, she was kind of bringing, hey, actually, like, it's about proportions. It's about ratios. And, you could be a size 14 or a size 4 and the ratio still, the proportion still works because you have the body that you have. Right. And so I loved her saying that. And I actually really think about how, we saw this with Naomi Osaka recently in her courture moment. And I love Naomi Osaka, and I think the way that she uses style as her tool to communicate is so powerful. And we've watched Michelle Obama do this, right? Like, we watched Meghan Markle do this, right? It's like, how do you use something like style as a tool to communicate the things that you want to say to the world without ever even having to use words to do it? And I just, as I've reemerged and have started playing with style again, and as a communicator, sometimes I'm like, ooh, do I want the clothes to say this thing or do I want my mouth to say the thing? And so I just loved, like, so it was like, I don't know, Brandeis just gave me a ton of, like, she reframes everything for me all the time, I feel like, but she just gave me, again, also lots of permission to, like, play a little bit more with that.
Yeah. That's really, that's something that I forgot. And maybe that was more of your takeaway from the conversation about, do you always want the clothes to be speaking, or do you dress in a different way when you want the focus to be on what you're actually saying?
Yes.
And if you're in a situation where you're not able to speak as much, that's so fascinating.
A superpower for sure.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
Then we had a conversation with Bianca B. King, and we talked about ambition. And I actually got, several messages specifically about this part of the conversation. So Bianca talks about something that she calls survival ambition, and the difference between survival ambition and joyful ambition. And people were in my messages or even texting me and were like, I've never heard it put this way before. This, like, so resonates for me. And I remember even saying in the episode, like, Bianca, we've talked about this for a couple of years now, and I don't think I've even heard you frame it this way. And it was just so powerful because it's like, as soon as it came out of her mouth, I was like, this is so true. Yes. Like, that's exactly like the sort of like rub that I can feel with it sometimes with ambition, is that, we talk a little bit about like toxic ambition and whatnot. And is that healthy? But like this, there's a difference between like when you have to survive and when that ambition is fueling that specific sort of like chapter or season of your life. And I just, that was so juicy.
Yeah. And it just felt like so much grace that it's, we're all steeped in the toxic ambition. And then, it's like, when you know better, you do better. And but then what happens when life happens? What happens when there's a family member who's sick, or there's a death, or there's a loss of employment, or, it's like sometimes you have to go back, and on the face of it, it could look like toxic ambition, but it's actually, you're intentionally choosing it because it's what's going to get you through this. Yeah. I just loved the permission and compassion that comes with offering that.
So good. Okay, we've said permission a few times, and I'm like, I don't know. I feel like we just it feels like a drum roll for our season 1, final guest, Samara Bay. So I love that, and I feel like as she listens to this, she will enjoy all the permission drops. But I loved my conversation with Samara, like that. You know, that intersection of, and I don't think we've often thought about speaking or even public speaking from that specific lens. We don't often talk about the interconnectedness between, again, mental health and well-being, and what happens, like what the output on stage can look like and how it might be impacted from that journey. And so to be able to have that sort of, conversation with her, I feel like was, I loved it as a friend, but just to receive that wisdom was really, really beautiful. I think she said something that I really, really loved. And she was talking about how the idea of permission isn't something that someone else hands us. It's a felt sense of safety that allows us to come out of hiding.
Wow. You feel that in your, like, to your bones, to the bone marrow. Like that is
it's cellular. Yes.
Yeah. Because permission can be kind of this, like, it sounds really good, but how do you actually give yourself permission?
Yeah.
How do you give other people permission? And so it made it so, it turned this, like, beautiful, but, vague idea into like a really concrete thing of like, oh, I know what that feels like when there's safety of, oh, there is permission to speak.
Yeah. And I think even, some of the things that she was sharing around, and I found this really encouraging, is that like all of us are dealing with inner voices, and Samara's worked with all the humans, right? Across industries, across, different places in their careers. I found it so encouraging that she has seen in her work. And something I feel like we know also to be true in our marrow is that everybody is dealing with these inner voices, and they're trying to keep us safe, as she says. But oftentimes it's not actually that helpful. And I know for me, with my experience and even coming and showing up at this specific mic, right? Week after week, that like exercising this muscle of, giving myself permission to show up and share my story. It's been cool to kind of watch the evolution of that, and to, at the beginning, as I was sharing, I would hear these voices, right? They would play all of these stories out around, oh, if you share this, if you say this, blah, 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 the trolls are going to come for this. And, and all of the things. And so, Samar just gave, I think, all of us a really, there was a gentleness there too, right? Of, and compassion of like, look, I know what the voices can say, and what would it look like for us to say, I appreciate that you're trying to keep me safe here, and I don't actually need that in this moment. What does it look like to challenge that?
Yeah. And that's something that that's probably the biggest piece that I've carried with me from her episode, is just this, what do you want to say back to the voices?
When she said like, that.
Wait, we can speak back?
Who knew?
Yeah. And to do it, like you said, with so much love, and not just, sometimes it can feel like the discourse around dealing with inner voices or the inner critic can be really like, well, just stop. And it's like, I don't, but how? How do you do that?
Yeah.
And it just, her approach felt so, it felt doable, but it was just so compassionate, and realizing like you just mentioned, that it's like they're there because something happened in the past that showed us that, like, they're trying to protect us from that happening again.
Yes.
But now that once we're in safety, they don't know. So we got to tell them. So how do we want to have that conversation with them? Like that was, I love that. That's something I'm practicing right now in my life. So I'm like, what do I want to say back to these voices rather than just trying to silence them or just ignore them? It's like, what would it look like to have a conversation?
Yeah. Yeah. And y'all, we are sitting here and we just really feel like we get a front row seat to learning and being students from these wonderful teachers. And there's so many of them, right? Like I think, all of us can teach each other something.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
What a gift again, to be seated where we are seated right now and to be able to collect this wisdom. And our hope, right, is to like, we get to bear witness to this and we wanted to share that with you all. And so I'm so excited for us to do this again in season 2 and for, things will be shaken up just a bit too. And I think in a really like refreshing, a little bit more, I don't know, like juicy even sort of manner. Yeah. I'm really excited.
Yeah. It feels like the next season we're giving ourselves permission. There's that word again. To just play even more.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Y'all, we spent a lot of this recording, giggling and laughing and having fun. You might not hear all of it in the final cut, but it happened. And more of that. Like we were just talking about how we haven't really laughed much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, more of that, more of the.
Yeah. More of, and more of like, we all know like the world is so serious and so hard and so heavy right now. And right, like this laughter piece does get to be revolution, right?
Yes.
In the midst of it all. And so, if you would like a ASMR video of Angelina and I just like losing it in laughter for, like solid 15 minutes.
Yes.
That happened here today.
We have that. We have the files. So.
Yeah, we do have the files. So, oh my gosh, what, again, like what a treat, what an honor. Thank you to everybody who has listened and tuned in. And if you haven't had a chance to, comb through all the episodes and glean the wisdom and take the pieces that, you feel are going to help you live a more just and joyful life and create a more just and joyful world. Summer is for road tripping, and there's such an opportunity for you to deep dive into these things. And go back, and we'll link everything up for you in the show notes so that you've got it. Thank you for being along the ride.
The Just and Joyful podcast is your host, creator, and executive producer, Kristin Carver Smith, executive producer, Angelina Burkholder, and production engineer, Joshua James. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.